Did you get a chance to hear Ariel Helwani? Because this was quite the interview on the Dan Le Batard Show on Monday. This was, if you listen to this, you'd come away with it. But the video really added another dimension, because Ariel Helwani is just having this like all out account of his time at ESPN and the problems dealing with the UFC, as he's wearing a wrestling mask, which he eventually did remove towards the end of this.
He gave us some context at the beginning of the interview because he thought that everybody on the panel was going to dress up. So he came up, came on the show dressed up as a. It added some element of surrealism to here. You know, if Paul Orndorff looking tough, beating up Vader in flip flops is a statement, I suppose Ariel Helwani cutting that promo on ESPN while wearing a lucha mask was a similar form of don't give a fuck type of statement, because he unloaded in this interview.
Yeah, I mean, just the Cole's notes of this was Ariel joined ESPN. He signed with them in April of 2018. It's the next month that the UFC ESPN deal is formed. And I remember Ariel came on our show right as he was starting at ESPN and noted that fact, that he was not aware that this was going to be the case. And he was going into it with, like, if you go back and listen to that interview in 2018, like, you can hear for himself. Like, I think he's going in there with like optimism of this not being a repeat of what happened to him at Fox, which, for those unaware, when he was working, doing like the UFC Tonight, it took one call from the UFC and Fox dropped Ariel. So at ESPN, this was a case. Ariel indicated in this interview that Dana White did not want him at ESPN, but ESPN was not going to. They were loyal to Ariel and they used him for these 3 years. He got a offer to stay at ESPN, but he said he was 100% disappointed with the offer he got from ESPN. So you can read into that what you will. If ESPN was doing a courtesy offer, knowing that it was essentially, we are not going to actively try to re-sign you, and it makes more sense for you to leave. But there was stuff in here that the story that I couldn't believe was where on site at some of these UFC events where Ariel literally had to be told by security to leave when Dana White would be showing up, because Ariel was not allowed to be in Dana White's vicinity or line of sight. That is, Dana White is going to wield whatever power others allow him to wield. And you are ESPN to not stand by your guy. That, to me, I couldn't work for a place like that. I could not work under that circumstance where I am told I am being escorted out because this individual that we are paying, we are the network paying the promotion, all of this, is not to see you. I said, it's me or it's them. I could not work under that. That is just an awful scenario.
So, Rustin in the chat room asked, what happened between Ariel and Dana? Do you care for the initiated to maybe give us maybe a bit of a Cole's notes about what maybe some of that tension stems from?
I mean, it goes back, I think, like the tipping point that most would be familiar with was UFC 199. And this was when Ariel Helwani had broken the story that Brock Lesnar was coming back the next month to fight Mark Hunt at UFC 200. And Ariel, Esther Lynn, and Casey Layden, they were escorted out of the forum in Inglewood, California. And Dana White said to Ariel that we just put a bullet in your career. And that was, or something to that effect. And he was to be banned from all future UFC events. And there was such an uproar in the media, and not just MMA media, like mainstream outlets that got on this. And within about 48 hours, they rescinded the ban, and Ariel has been welcomed back at events. But there's been no relationship between Ariel Helwani and Dana White since that breaking point. Ariel at one time was like the go-to interview that Dana White would make time for at every single event, pre-fight, post-fight. And then like this occurred, and there's been some really nasty comments, like personal comments that Dana White has made over the years about Ariel. But to my knowledge, like there's been zero contact between Ariel and Dana White throughout all of these years.
Mm-hmm. And he details actually in an interview that Ariel was encouraged to try to make amends with Dana and
to reach out and try and extend the olive branch. Ariel doing this to Dana, which Ariel said he reluctantly did, but then Dana never responded. So there's been nothing involving this. Like you can, and I think like what was, brought up by Ariel in this interview is that, for the last number of years, he's been co-hosting, since the beginning of his time at ESPN, he was doing the Ariel and the Bad Guy show on ESPN Plus. And then throughout the pandemic, his Monday show has been with Daniel Cormier. And as he noted, never have they been promoted on the broadcast, which UFC controls the production of what airs on ESPN. That is a UFC directive of what airs, what doesn't air. And then this past Saturday night, I mean, they had tons of promos for Chael's show, for Daniel Cormier's show with his new co-host. So I think that was also very, very telling on top of things. So, and this just seemed to be Ariel getting everything out in this interview about, he was very complimentary towards ESPN, that they had his back. They didn't stop using him, even though it was probably very combative when they're in business with the UFC and with Dana White. He named a lot of the people that helped give him, the opportunity to do NBA work at the network. So this certainly was not, I would say, anti-ESPN. But I think at the same time, like this did not sound like a fun 3 years. And I think Ariel believed that when he joined ESPN that he would be there for life. And instead he's going this direction, which I think for him career wise, I think this is like, this is not an environment to me that is like it to have that amount of, every job is going to come with certain stresses. But this to me was, I think he's in a better scenario now.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I don't know financially if he would be okay, but like to me,
he said in this interview he is making more now.
Really? Then congratulations. Good for him, because there's no downside to this whatsoever. Okay, because I see this and I hear him. I hear his energy in this, and not only like is he, not only does he now kind of have the credential of ESPN on his resume now. Former ESPN, whatever, like he's got that bullshit air of legitimacy that, his audience honestly probably doesn't really care about. But if he were to speak to, I don't know, whoever else, it adds something. But beyond that, he is fired up. This is like, like waiting on the sidelines for that hot tag, and he just got it. And he's going to unleash across several platforms in that lucha mask, diving off the top rope. He's going to be on fire. He's going to be hulking up. And I think the audience is right there with him. Like it's a story that I think a lot of us are familiar with, and almost everybody is on this guy's side. Fighters and the audience, of course, and of course the media. If you're a fan, if you're somebody who cares about free press when it comes to sports, like this is a story you should be interested in, because here's a man who is trying to control the narrative based on, who can or cannot report it, including the number one reporter in the sport. So I wish him all the success, I know 100% he'll achieve things that I don't think he ever imagined.
There's no price tag you can put on independence and having that not being beholden to anybody. Like there's no price you can put on that, and your happiness. I think like that goes without saying. I'd be remiss not to look at all of this, and you have to question, like, what will the relationship be between Ariel and the UFC moving forward, where he is not attached to ESPN. He is working with BT Sport, which is does have the UK and Ireland rights with the UFC. But
how much of that matters, in your opinion, John? Like, he can cover this sport without being there.
I agree with you. I think like there is a benefit to, on-site access. But I think for Ariel, as long as he is doing the MMA hour, like, fighters will go to him. And unlike what we would see in WWE, for instance, like, there are many disgruntled fighters that will not bite their tongue publicly, that will gladly go and speak to Ariel regardless of the UFC. The UFC is not going to be able to have that power to stop fighters from going on his show. I don't think they have that amount of power to exercise, nor do I think they want to, as an antitrust suit is still ongoing. In WWE, it's very, I'm not going to say never, because there are times you can speak to WWE talent that will not have you go through WWE to book them. But that is the exception, not the rule.
And he'll be covering wrestling too.
He will be. He's going to be doing. He's going to SummerSlam to cover it in Las Vegas. Maybe we will have him come on as a correspondent.
Yeah, we'll welcome him, definitely.